Hello. Welcome to Iran's History and Culture channel. We, in this channel, pay attention to the culture and history of Iran. Also, we talk about some points that you might not know about Iran. Therefore, expect to learn a lot. If you would like, you can subscribe our channel and press the bell button, to become aware about new videos that we upload. Hope that you enjoy. Defeating Lydia was by no means an easy feat, but Cyrus the Great pulled it off. This was also significant because Lydia had always been a thorn in the side of Iranian plateau empires, including the Medes. On the other hand, the Greek occupants of the area couldn't accept the situation. They declared that if Cyrus attempted to take over the islands that the Greeks resided in, they would respond with ferocity. As a result, Cyrus sent Harpagus, who was now a high-ranking officer in his army, to subjugate the Greek islands, a task that he carried out successfully. Here, history suddenly goes silent for 6 years and opens up in a series of strange events. Western and Greek historians haven't said anything about this period. All that we know is that all of a sudden, Cyrus has now captured the southern beaches of the Caspian Sea, all the way to India. The only thing we can say for sure is that the most extensive empire of the ancient world had been created by Cyrus. Just 1 year after conquering Lydia, Cyrus the Great was Asia's undisputed ruler. There were no true rivals to his power. He had the entire Iranian plateau in his grasp, conquered the eastern and northeastern areas of the plateau till India, and brought Lydia down to its knees after many battles. Another important thing that stabilized his rule was that he managed to make the Scythians bow down to him. They were a tribe that caused many problems for Iran from back in the days of the Medes Empire, but with Cyrus on the throne, they became subordinates to the Achaemenid Empire. Cyrus had effectively turned Iran into a superpower and stood at the peak of fame. No one could dream of competing against him other than the Babylonians. The Babylonians stood strong and unmoving. They had used the events in the region to their own benefit. They had avoided conflict, especially with Iran. Lydia's fate was something they wanted to stay away from. They had their forts and lived in Mesopotamia in security. However, the Babylonian Empire also faced changes from within. Nabonidus was the ruler of Babylon, and a very cruel one at that. At the time, Babylonians fervently worshipped a god named Marduk, who was known as the god of gods and the ruler of gods. However, Nabonidus didn't care about what the people wanted. He didn't pay tribute to Marduk and openly worshipped different gods. He created majestic shrines. He ordered the creation of incredible sculptures of the gods. The costs for all of these ventures came from the pockets of the unwilling people of Babylon. Naturally, this led to discontent among the people. While the situation was quite shaky at this time, Babylon generally boasts powerful settlements and good lives for its people throughout history. This only made the situation under Nabonidus stand out even more. All of these resulted in the weakening of his rule. The Babylonian king contemporary to Cyrus' rise was Nabonidus' son, Belshazzar. Nabonidus had entrusted him with ruling and departed from the capital for 7 years. Allegedly, Nabonidus returned to Babylon in the final year of the empire when he caught wind of the imminent downfall. Ancient texts from Babylon, Greece, and even the Cyrus Cylinder, all agree on one thing. Conquering Babylon was not difficult for the Persians. This was due to the weak government and the people already expecting Cyrus to attack after his other exploitations, believing based on his track record, that he would free them from the tyranny of their current rulers. When Cyrus began moving toward Babylon, Gobryas, a Babylonian governor of the area, and his soldiers joined up with Cyrus, bolstering the Iranian forces. Even though Babylonian and Jewish texts speak of this conquest as a divine blessing, a closer look into history shows that the beginning of these events was a full year before the fall of Babylon. In the first major clash, Cyrus defeated the Babylonian army, commanded by Belshazzar, in a difficult battle now known as the Battle of Opis. Nabonidus and Belshazzar retreated after giving heavy losses. After this, the city of Sippar was conquered, and then a smaller battle happened near the gates of Babylon, which ended in another victory for Cyrus. Following this defeat, Nabonidus and his son escaped into the city's powerful defenses. In response, Cyrus surrounded the city. The only weakness in Babylon's defenses was the entryway of the Euphrates River. Gobryas decided to alter the river's course and secure a way into the city. A powerful strategy that worked. At the time, the people of Babylon were two groups. First, the Jewish who had been enslaved and greatly disliked the Babylonian rulers because of that. Second, the Babylonians themselves, who weren't far off from living like slaves and despised Nabonidus, especially because of the inhumane taxes and restrictions. All of these and the situation at hand meant that these people were ready to betray Nabonidus. This meant that even before conquering Babylon, Cyrus had unintended allies in the city. Based on Herodotus' narrative, the Persian soldiers managed to alter the river's course, which also happened to be at a low point at that time, and enter the city through the riverbed. Gobryas led a small vanguard into the city and took over the city's infrastructure with the element of surprise. Thus, Babylon was conquered in the final days of 539 BC, with minimal fighting. Nabonidus surrendered, but Belshazzar, who refused to bow to the Persians, was killed in battle. Cyrus entered Babylon in full glory, stepping into the city as if he was a messiah. The sympathy the Babylonians had for Cyrus and the Persians left a deep impression on them. As a result, Cyrus never treated them as defeated slaves. He rebuilt Marduk's temple and coronated himself in that very temple. He also treated Nabonidus like a nobleman and refrained from taking him as a prisoner. The relationship between the two grew to such an extent that some historians claim Cyrus took Nabonidus to Pars and Shiraz, where they spent time together. Nabonidus even taught Cyrus some battle tactics and gave him very good military recommendations. 1 year after the fall of Babylon, 538 BC, Nabonidus passed away. Cyrus declared nationwide mourning and personally attended Nabonidus' funeral ceremony. The conquering of Babylon was a changing point in both Cyrus' life and Iran's history. Cyrus didn't enslave any group of humans after conquering Babylon and forbid his soldiers from causing any harm, financial or physical, to the people. He also gathered everyone who had been a slave in Babylon and returned them to their homelands. This included the Jewish people who had been enslaved to Babylon for many years. Cyrus then commanded that the events till now, his orders and accomplishments be written down on a clay cylinder, now known as the Cyrus Cylinder, which was then placed in Marduk's temple. This artifact was created in 538 BC. The Cyrus Cylinder was discovered in 1879 by a Syro-British archaeologist, Hormuzd Rassam, and then taken to the British Museum. Cyrus conquered Babylon on October 29, a historical day for Iran. On that day, Iranian rulers became the unrivaled and undisputed rulers of Asia and the Middle East. Even now, after thousands of years, October 29 is known as Cyrus the Great Day. The text of the Cyrus Cylinder is as follows: I am Cyrus, king of the universe, the great king, the powerful king, king of Babylon, king of Sumer and Akkad, king of the four quarters of the world, son of Cambyses, the great king, king of the city of Anshan, grandson of Cyrus, the great king, king of the city of Anshan, the descendant of Thespes, the great king, king of Anshan, the perpetual seed of kingship, whose reign Bel and Nabu love, and with whose kingship, to their joy, they concern themselves. When I went as a harbinger of peace into Babylon, I founded my sovereign residence within the palace amid celebration and rejoicing. Marduk, the great lord, bestowed on me as my destiny the great magnanimity of one who loves Babylon, and I every day sought him out in awe. My vast troops marched peaceably in Babylon, and the whole of Sumer and Akkad had nothing to fear. I sought the welfare of the city of Babylon and all its sanctuaries. From Shanu I sent back to their places to the city of Ashur and Susa, Akkad, the land of Eshununna, the city of Zamban, the city of Meternu, Tyre, as far as the border of the land of Cu, the sanctuaries across the river Tigris, whose shrines had earlier become dilapidated, the gods who lived therein, and made permanent sanctuaries for them. I collected together all of their people and returned them to their settlements, and the gods of the land of Sumer and Akkad which Nabonidus, to the fury of the Lord of the gods, had brought into Shana, at the command of Marduk, the great lord, I returned them unharmed to their cells, in the sanctuaries that make them happy. The celebration and well-regarding of Cyrus aren't limited to Babylonian texts. These can be seen in texts remaining from many religions and tribes from the past as well. One of these groups is the Jewish people who hold Cyrus in very high regard and consider him a messiah. They had been enslaved since the time of Nebuchadnezzar II. When Cyrus conquered Babylon, he freed them and sent them back to their homeland. He even returned what had been plundered from Jerusalem to the Jews and gave them money to rebuild their temples. Later on, Cyrus stopped actively backing the Jews as they stumbled into some internal conflicts, and he decided against interfering with them. Their internal problems were their own to solve, but the fact that Cyrus had greatly aided them remained unchanged. Iran's history, especially ancient Iranian history, has always been blurred. One of the many unknowns is Cyrus' death. There are so many stories about Cyrus' death, that Herodotus states that he is going to tell a single story of the many narratives surrounding Cyrus' death. While some narratives hold more weight, none have been determined to be correct. Herodotus' narrative is as follows: when Cyrus managed to conquer Babylon, he stayed there for a while and dealt with the issues of Babylon and Damascus. Damascus includes contemporary Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. After finishing his work there, Cyrus returned to Iran, intending to go to war in the eastern and northeastern reaches of his empire. There isn't much information about the tribes Cyrus was up against, just that Herodotus called them the Massageti. Another historian called them the Darbises, and another claimed that they were known as the Da'i. All three names appear to be correct. The three were probably all tribes among the Scythians, as the Scythians occupied the northern and northeastern reaches of the Persian Empire. They were rogue tribes that were always causing problems for Iran. The queen of the Massageti was a woman named Tomaris. Cyrus intended to subjugate these tribes and solve the problem once and for all. Allegedly, Cyrus was wounded during this campaign and died as a result. Queen Tomaris then beheaded his corpse and sent it back to Iran. This is one of the many narratives, and historians say that it may be true, as there are remnants of the Achaemenids in the area where the Scythians lived. A battle could have certainly unfolded here, but not with all the specifics that Herodotus mentions. The existence of a queen who beheaded Cyrus isn't clear. After all, Cyrus' tomb is in Pasargadae, in central Iran, which is very far away from the battle scene. In general, the Greeks, who are the main historians of the era, weren't fond of writing about the accomplishments and conquerings of Iran. They frequently wove legends and crafted dreams. For example, they would end their narratives with a moral. Like here, it would be that the person who conquered so many lands and the entire world, met his end at the hands of a nomadic tribe, so the world is not worth much. The world is backstabbing, etc. They tended to finish the stories like Hollywood movies. However, Xenophon, another Greek historian, tells an entirely different story. Based on his narrative, Cyrus was at the peak of power. He had conquered Babylon and didn't bother himself with small battles and skirmishes. Also, the Scythians had already become subordinate to the Achaemenids before defeating Babylon, meaning that there was no need for such a battle and that it never happened. Cyrus grew old and passed away in the company of his friends and family. Both of these theories have their supporters and skeptics. The stance in this article is neutral. After all, there is no definitive evidence that either is correct. As mentioned before, the history of ancient Iran is quite veiled. What can be said for sure is that not only was Cyrus a conqueror, but also a respected figure. Many religious books held Cyrus in high regard after his death and made him into a superhuman figure. Historians believe that the entirety of Cyrus' expansion, from his first march from Anshan, all the way to the conquering of Babylon, was all within 30 years. Cyrus' tomb, which is among the castles of Pasargadae, has captured the attention of many. This tomb is the most beautiful and majestic structure in the entire Pasargadae complex, which still stands strong and mostly unharmed after the passage of over 25 centuries. Cyrus' stone tomb, with a stone foundation that has an area of 156 square meters, and a height of 11 meters, is unique. Because his successors all made their tombs inside rooms dug into the mountainside. This tomb has been created with large white marble slabs and in a layered fashion. The current structure lacks any text, but ancient Greek historians have narrated a text which had been installed inside the tomb. "O man, whoever you are and wherever you come from, for I know you will come, I am Cyrus who won the Persians their empire. Do not, therefore, begrudge me this bit of earth that covers my bones." Thus, Cyrus the Great, who had managed to create the largest empire of the ancient world, was laid to eternal rest in a small chamber in Pasargadae. He ruled in a fashion that historians not only inspect his reign, rule, and expansions but also closely examine his mannerisms. There are very few kings in history whose mannerisms are explored and written about. Cyrus' legacy wasn't only his great empire, it was also an epigraph that has remained till this day, and human rights have been built upon it as a foundation. Cyrus founded humanity in the world.
If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like it, and share it with your friends. Do not hesitate to provide your view regarding this video by putting your comments below. Your comments would help us to improve our work, and also, they help us to take your views into account for the future topics that we select. Furthermore, you can subscribe to our channel to become aware of our new videos.